The doors open. It's time to get into the tavern. I'm sure it is cold out. Some of you have been complaining that it's cold outside and you want to get into the tavern. Well, we have plenty of hot drinks in temperature and other ways. Boy, do I need it today. So I scheduled this live stream. I said I can do a live stream, and then my not so fun cold really started to kick it up a notch. And so I'll do my best to not cough on you in this live stream, although I'm sure I'll cough enough as it is. But you know what? A whole bunch of nutmeg. Hold on. Will probably cure me or kill me, one of the two. So we'll do our best. Welcome into the tavern. I'm your host, John Townsend. I am joined today by the normal crew here in the tavern. Serving up in the chat is Lauren.
Hello.
And doing all the stuff on the other side of the time vortex, which is a very dangerous job, is Ivy.
Hello.
There they are. And I am here doing whatever it is I do. And today's main topic is Pemmican, because we just got done with the Pemmican episode and it was a lot of fun and everybody's got lots of questions about Pemmican. And of course, you know, the episode is only just so long, and Pemmican is a fun and big topic, and it is kind of forgotten, but not forgotten. It's a fun food group to dig into. It has a immensely long history. Thousands of years people have been making something like pemmican, mostly Native Americans. And they've been making pemmican out of basically probably every meat possible and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So we'll be talking about that, and everybody has questions about how they can adapt pemmican. Well, the whole point of pemmican is not to adapt it. Anyway, but did we need to cover anything specific before we get going? Lauren?
I thought I'd do a couple the super chats we have for right now, so we can and then we'll get started on our questions.
Very
That's
good.
right. So the first super chat I have is from Scott Westbrook, and haven't caught a live stream live in a long time. Continued thanks for your wonderful content. Thumbs up.
Thank you, Scott, for joining us in this live stream. You guys here in the live stream are a special sub-segment, a very small, thin sliver of very important people on YouTube. I want you to know that. You help make the channel possible by sort of pushing the boundaries and seeing what people are interested in. And when you're here in the chat, it helps us to understand everyone out there a little better. So thank you for your participation.
I've got one from Macaroni Gluer. Have spoken to a local butcher about getting suet so I can make lots of pemmican. I want to make some for short-term storage and then some for long-term storage.
Yes. So some of the pemmicans that were made were not made with the suet, especially the short-term pemmicans. Those were made with other kinds of fats, and there are something like, I don't know, 7 different kinds. I'm going to pick a good number. I think it's somewhere close to that. 7 different kinds of fats that you will find inside of a bison. And they would use them at different times for different purposes. But the commercial pemmican that we know of that gets so very, very popular in the 19th century is made with that very dense and waxy organ fat.
There is one from Max Arkul. Sending lots of nutmeg and hot water with lemon to help you feel a little better.
I can use every drop.
And then a super chat from Justin Numbers. Shots of nutmeg for everyone.
Ooh, wait, hold on. This is close. Okay, let's go.
Okay, so we have many questions here, and a lot of them have to do with additions. So the first one is, would adding salt and pepper be an issue? Both tend to dissuade insects and bacteria and would add a savor to the pemmican. And then another person, greetings from Argentine Patagonia. is salt not added to the preparation of pemmican? And then someone else, can it be prepped with some salt and pepper? Or would salt soak in moisture from the atmosphere and spoil the pemmican? And then someone else, is there a reason that salt isn't added? It seems like it would be nutritionally useful under these circumstances and might also extend the shelf life. And then also, is it possible to incorporate carbohydrates like flour? And then it would be hardtack and pemmican in one meal.
That's a lot of questions, all surrounding a galaxy of questions, all around the same topic there. Specifically, I mean, there's spicing, and then there's two different content things here. How do we mix it? Do we mix things in? And I found very little reference to zero reference to preparing pemmican with salt. I'm not saying that it isn't there. I'm just saying that the vast majority of references do not include salt. And one of the reasons why is because the place that it was being prepared did not have salt. So it wasn't something that was being brought into the area. I mean, the whole point was that it was a really, really good food source that didn't need anything else. The place where this was being made was very difficult to get supplies to, especially if you didn't have pemmican. And so if you don't have salt, you don't want to add it to it. And you're producing very large quantities, and you would need a lot of salt. And if you think about what's going on with salt provisions, so whether it's salt pork, salt beef, even salted vegetables, the whole point, or salted bacon, or salted butter, all of these salt provisions, the salt was added to keep them from going bad. But to make it edible, you had to wash the salt out. So they washed the salt out of their butter, at least as much as they could. Now today, what we have for salted butter is lightly salted butter, because the salt isn't in there as much as a preservation technique, although it is. If you keep butter on your countertop, not in a refrigerator, your unsalted butter will go bad rather rapidly compared to salted butter. That being said, so number one, they don't have salt. Number two, there's probably no good, decent way of washing the salt out of pemmican. And if your pemmican can last 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, depending on how it is prepared, why would you add salt? You wouldn't.
Because you can add it afterwards if you have it.
You could.
When you're preparing it.
Right. So there's no reason to add the salt, because and then you're already adjusting your pre-made provision, and you're making it so that you can't modify it. So the best provision that you brought in, excuse me, is one that is very, very flexible and doesn't already come in with too many seasonings or other things like that. So probably the problem with salt pork and the problem with salt beef is that it no matter what you did to it, it's always going to be salty, and you always have to spend time taking the salt out of it. So it's a great benefit to not have salt in your pemmican. Now, pepper. Pepper is expensive, and you got the same problem. You would have to import the pepper in to put into your pemmican. So historically, there was no reason to put in spices like that. They would have been an expensive thing. They wouldn't have added any great quantity to it. And again, you have that problem of it's already peppered. What if I want unpeppered? What if I'm making, a pemmican cheesecake or something, right? And you don't want salt in it. Okay, you're not going to make pemmican cheesecake, but say you were. You wouldn't want the salt in it. So there's pepper, there's salt. They did add, of course, other things, specifically fruit. Probably not to the commercially produced product. It would be like, why add this expensive thing when everybody wants plain Jane pemmican? So as a delicacy and as something you prepare for yourself, you might very well add service berries or currants or other kinds of fruits that go well with your pemmican, and that will make it taste better and make it a yummy thing. but it will not last as long. So you're bringing in sugars and you're bringing in other kinds of moisture and other things going on, and your pemmican naturally will not have a long lifespan. And wow, I don't know if my voice is going to last this whole lifespan. What else was there in that? Did I cover them all?
I think so. That we've run across so far.
You asked about flour,
yes,
cornmeal,
yep.
And again, I think it's actually going to be a detriment to it. It was probably done at times in emergency situations. I was reading in a book, and they were talking about starvation situations and them having to, it's like, well, we don't have pemmican. What are we going to do? We're going to have this lard and cornmeal, or we're going to, put flour in there, whatever. That was happening, but generally that was when you couldn't get pemmican, and they were just grasping at straws trying to feed people.
Now, someone was saying that she was a descendant of the Plains Native Americans,
right,
and that they would put cattail root, powdered cattail root in their mixture.
Very
now,
interesting.
it sounded though like what they were doing was more of a sweet pemmican that was meant for short term,
right,
that was meant to be eaten right away, not for long term storage.
So again, to that point, I mean, pemmican's being made for thousands of years before it is adapted, changed into an industrial product in the early 19th century, late 18th century. And there are, multitudes of Indian nations, and they are very different from each other. We think of them sometimes, it's easy for us to think Native Americans are all the same. They are not all the same at all, So they all have different traditions and different ways of doing, or some may not even have traditions in a pemmican type product, but many of them did. And so they're going to make them in many, many different ways out of different kinds of meat. Moose and deer and fish and, bison and all these other ones. They're going to mix it with different kinds of fats for different kinds of purposes. Some of them almost kind of quasi-religious in a sense, where they're kind of worshiping the animal while they sustain themselves with it. And sometimes they're very, very careful about that. Other times it is, we're in times of plenty, so we're going to eat whatever we're going to eat. And we're going to have a good time doing it. So there are a bunch of different traditions in there. Don't lock them all together and think it's only one way.
Okay, so somebody was wondering if you could add nutmeg to pemmican.
That's probably the only thing I would add to pemmican. And I have my pemmican. These are the actual blocks that you saw in the thumbnail. It's interesting. So somebody asked about the thumbnail on pemmican and why we changed it, right? And remember, this is what I'm missing. And sometimes we'll get comments, it's like, why did you change thumbnail XYZ? We changed thumbnails because thumbnail making, the thumbnail of a video is the number one make or break on a video. Whether it'll be, and I can use the word popular if I want, but I think exposure is just as important. It's the number one factor in getting a video more exposure. So it's the billboard for a video. And again, it's art, not science. You can come up with sort of lots of different sorts of guidelines for having a proper thumbnail. And different ones are going to work for different channels, for different purposes, different audiences. All that is just crazy, wild, strange. We test a lot of thumbnails that we didn't used to because it is so very, very important. And some videos we have basically, they were dead in the water, and we changed the thumbnail, and they have been very popular. So when we do a thing like that with pemmican, we may say, well, that video is doing okay, and YouTube gives us these wonderful sets of numbers that we can see behind the scenes, and we can say, yeah, that thumbnail is not clicking with people. They don't understand what that picture is, and it doesn't make them want to click it and get more interesting. So sometimes is the topic interesting, but many times it's, did you make that image so that they stopped for a second and said, well, oh, pemmican, yes, I've always wanted to know about that. So we've played around with that, and the pemmican thumbnail, we changed it to that close-up shot, and it's a fun one. I like it.
Okay, so that brings up another question. Carol Sampinelli?
I'm glad I didn't.
I hope that was close. She's wondering, she was looking for the video where you were doing the weaving, and it's unlisted now. And so a couple other people had asked questions about that, about the Don't Be Afraid to Succeed video and the myth of the rugged individual, because there have been a lot of videos unlisted recently, so some of them have been noticed.
More behind the inside baseball, I like that. Behind the inside baseball about YouTube, and that is we have to experiment. We have to continue to work at the channel and make it work for the audience and YouTube and all that good stuff. And we have been unlisting, now it's important, unlisting a lot of videos on the channel. They're harder to find. In no way have they been taken down so that you cannot see them. You just can't find them. Okay.
No, so to this specific video, the
Right.
weaving, it should be in the playlist, the how-to playlist. I'm
Right.
pretty sure that where that one is. And they are all tucked away. 99% of them
Right.
are tucked away in playlists.
Right. So you'll be able to find them in playlists. So if you go to the playlist section of the channel, you can find playlists for all kinds of different things. And you can look inside of the playlist and see the videos. And so they're unlisted. You can find them within playlists. But if you search for them on YouTube, you will not find them. And you won't see them if you just scroll through the pages on our YouTube channel. We love those videos, and we love the message of the videos. But YouTube seems to like us better, I'll say it like that, if our content is packaged in a smaller ball. We have a very big ball of content, and maybe it's confusing to the powers that be out there. So we've shrunk that. If there's a particular kind of content and you think, wow, more people ought to be exposed to that, it is a perfect opportunity for you to share that unlisted link. So it'll still work. If you send people the link to the video, they'll still be able to watch it, and the message gets out. So it's like, you think a video's good, share it on Facebook or some other way that you would do that kind of thing, and the video will get seen by more people. I think that's all there is to say.
Perfect. Okay. Oh, and I was going to say, this happened with chicken salad. Someone couldn't find the chicken salad, and they emailed, and we were able to send them a link. So if you ever run across a video and you're like, I cannot find it, just email us
Yes.
through the contact us page on the website, and we will do our best to send it along to you.
Yes, if you think, I know there was a video,
It's gotta be here.
just ask us.
So one of the other questions that came up about pemmican was, what about the fat going rancid? Because of course that is an issue with lots of fats.
Yeah, so, I mean, the whole point of pemmican, at least the industrialized product, commercialized product, I think that's what I want to call it, is the fact that it has longevity. And, of course, what's going on with that longevity, and how do you deal with rancid fats, etc. If the suet, or specifically suet, if it is rendered properly, which removes the extraneous things out of the suet. Wait, hold on. I have a show and tell here. I don't have a paper towel. Anyway, Blocko suet, right? It's like got these little flaky blobs and everything. This is the fat that comes that is around the organs of the bison and cows, also around the kidneys, and it has a very, very specific higher melting point, And if you render it properly, you remove everything but the fat. You remove the moisture, and it is shelf stable at that point. After you've removed those things, you kind of melted it down, you let it kind of percolate for a little bit, boiled off all that moisture. That suet is good for basically ever, barring a lot of moisture and all those kinds of things. And when we take our bison meat that has been dried, 24, 48 hours in the sun, the low humidity situation of the Great Plains at the time, and you beat it with a big wooden mallet or whatever, a pestle, until it is almost powdered. And you can definitely see it in the video, I believe. I was doing a little experiment. I was showing the camera, it's like, okay, they did this. Today we want to do it easy. We'll put it in a blender or food processor and it'll whir it up. And not quite the same thing. It when you pound it, it really breaks it down much further, breaks down all those fibers. That allows it to dry even more, which is hard to believe because, like it says in the one book, you could use a strip of this for a belt. It's very, very sturdy stuff. But as you pulverize it, then you mix it in with that hot, totally molten suet. It basically packages every molecule of pemmican in a little coating of, this waxy fat. And that is the true preservation technique. Each one of those little parts of meat is totally encased in this shelf-stable fat. And so that's this bag, this 90-pound bag of pemmican, if kept in the proper environment, will last virtually forever. And I have no idea what the original question was. Woo!
I was reading the chat, so I have totally no idea.
Whatever.
Wait, it was...
What?
It was
Sleepy time in the tavern today, John.
It was about the rancid fats.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
So,
There you go. So you don't want to use cutaneous fat, that's the fat under the skin. You don't want to use the muscle fat that's right around the pieces of meat. There are so many different kinds of fat. There's a marrow fat, which is very important to making the very, very high-end pemmican. So marrow fat, break the bones, boil them, and then it brings up a very, very rich and tasty fat. We don't think of fat as food very often, but I like butter. Anyway, but they did. They definitely did. So it's really good stuff.
okay, so I have a couple super chats, and the first one is from Terry T. Chicken soup for John.
Yeah, I could use like a bucket of chicken soup right now.
And then here's one from Phobos Anomaly. Have you ever heard of nasal snuff tobacco? It was widely used back in the day. Kind greetings from Slovenia. I think.
Slavonia.
Oh, Slovenia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Snuff is popular. In fact, apparently Martha Washington was a snuff user. And popular in the 18th century. They even had special little grinders. So, possibly if you weren't buying snuff as an already pre-prepared thing, you might have your own little snuff grinder and, just take your tobacco and grind it up into your snuff. Popular in the 18th century.
Okay, so there's one from Terry T. Learning how to do this. Thanks, Townsends, for what you do.
Thank you very much.
And then there's a super chat from David Dianelli. I just learned that you can get wax from bayberry plants. What were bayberry candles used in the time period?
Yes, but it does not cough up a whole bunch of wax. You got to take all those berries and you boil them, and then this layer of wax comes up to the top, and it's probably very, very regionally specific. So I don't know a ton about bayberry candles in our 18th century context.
I was looking at candles in the newspaper. I was specifically searching for candles in the newspapers during the time period, and I think I ran across one reference to them,
Right.
and I was pleased to find it.
Even beeswax candles, you don't see that often.
It's true. It's tallow. It's lots of tallow, and but they were very prized because of how hard it was. It was tough to make them, just because you didn't get much from them. There was somebody who asked if you wanted to become proficient at making pemmican, are there any kind of current resources that really delve deep into the making of and the different ways to do it? Or is it mostly just experimentation?
Yeah, it isn't rocket science. Yeah, just, you're drying that meat as much as possible. You're mixing it with the rendered suet, and you're looking at particular ratios. There certainly was a development there in the late 18th century, early 19th century, where they were experimenting with the mix of fats. So is it like 50-50 muscle fat to suet? Is it, they were trying to find the right one, probably economically, and holding up for the proper amount of time. Sometimes having something last 20 years isn't all that, it's like, oh, it costs 50% more, but it lasts twice as long. Well, I only need it to last one season, so there's no reason to, add that amount of cost to it. So there are times when, you adjust something because you only need it to last so long. So it depends on what you're making your pemmican for and how it's going to be used. So, I'm making pemmican to sell to people that are going to be using it within a month or two. Or we have modern packaging techniques that make it so that it can last, even though the mix is a little bit, it isn't perfect for longevity purposes. So there are a bunch of things, if you were going to make it into a modern product today, or something for personal use, you can do a bunch of adjustment.
Okay, a couple of different people were wondering, can you eat pemmican can you mix it up a certain way to eat it without teeth, or also can you just eat it without teeth? And I'm thinking you could just pinch off a piece and swallow it, because it's already
Yeah, you've taken that meat and you've already basically powdered it. There is nothing there that is tooth-worthy. If that's a word.
Which actually makes an excellent thing for that. Okay, do we want to
good baby food. Oh, hey, baby, it's just pemmican.
Do you want to do the pictures now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I so want to do the pictures.
There are pictures. Did you put them in? Okay. You can put them in right now, can't you? They're on the desktop.
Yes.
While she's working on that.
While Ivy's doing that.
While she's working on that. Brand new Patreon. Patreon people. Since last week was a marathon, and thank you guys for watching those marathons and being with me in the chat. They are such a just amazingly good thing. I am always amazed by what the marathons do and how people enjoy them and how wonderful they are. So brand new Patreon people: Daniel Marks, Kendall, Alicia, Jesse Carr, Erica Morovic, and Joe McCann. Brand new people on Townsends Plus: Tiffany B, Alicia B, Namu O, and Andrew L. And then new and renewing YouTube members, special set of wonderful folks: KM, Sean Glacken, Leslie Bradley, Rita Loy, Jessica Gasparini, David Woolsey, Duke Woolsey, Thomas Orbeck, Kana, Theri Easel, Rose McGuinn, Shevenko 7CFC, Lafille du Vogier, and Stephen Alexander, C. Sims, David Collar. Thank you, David. He's the one who provided the suet. So thank you, David Collar. And Joe and Jane Doe. Uh-oh. What was that? Okay. Everything went blank for a second. I thought maybe the time vortex exploded. But
No, it didn't explode, but I did get the pemmican pictures.
woohoo! Let's do it. Pemmican Pictures 101.
Is there supposed to be a picture of a slug in there?
Yes, there is.
Oh.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe I don't know about all these
It's
pictures.
okay.
It'll be fun.
He's the last one for a reason.
Okay. Let's fire it up. There you can see the title to this. And this is these were done in the 1860s.
It's kind of a
1850s?
range, but yeah, like 1870.
Okay.
And
So this is mid to late 19th century, and this is somebody who's on, in the western frontier plains, and wonderful kind of home folky art. I love it, love it, love it. I wish I could draw that well. And this one's titled "His First Experience of Pemmican," and you can see the person there in in the middle, like everyone's going, "He, he, he." Let's watch him while he tries to eat this. Apparently, he's not enjoying the pemmican. But hey, it's food. It's eat the pemmican or starve. Notice the horses. There's a mix of people. There's a Native American. There's different kinds of frontiersy people, and guns and hats and all kinds of stuff hanging around there. And I guess that stuff in his hand. I mean, there's the tin cup, and then there's that whatever in his hand. It must be a pemmican, and he looks a little less than thrilled about pemmican. What's the next picture? Oops, no, I shouldn't have done that. Hauling the something with dogs.
Oh yeah, hold on. This is hauling the meat in with the dogs, and then
hauling the
it's
meat in.
Fort Rabine, 1873.
Right. So, this is happening a lot in this whole context, whether it's late 18th century or all the way in here to basically late 19th century. And there were all these kind of forts and trading posts, sometimes exactly the same thing. And they need food. And so people are going out and hunting, and then they're bringing food back to that location. And, that's for immediate sustenance for the people that are surviving there. They're in a lot of territory that has a very low level of sustainability in the time period they had a great difficulty in growing crops in the area this was happening. So this is Saskatchewan and places like that, the upper plains, and they had a lot of difficulty with agriculture. They had crop failures, like 30 crop failures in 50 years. Basically every other year you couldn't grow grain. And so they were surviving on meat that was brought in. And here's the situation. And in one of the readings, there's even a mention of dogs. And I'll try to get to that if we have time. Let's go ahead. Do you know what this one reads?
Okay, hold on just a sec. I gotta look it up because mine was delayed. Okay, this says Terra Blanc Rapid, Nahako River, 1877.
Yes, it's like Whiteland Rapids. And they have different kinds of canoes and boats in this time period. They're York boats, which aren't really canoes, but boats that were specifically adapted to the waters. And then they had canoes, and the canoes in the kind of the Midwest and Great Lakes area, the canoes could get very large, hauling as much as 8,000 pounds in a canoe. As you went more and west, the rivers became much more difficult, and the canoes had to shrink in size. And so you would get canoes like this that were 20 feet long and manned by a certain number of people. They had even this is kind of a small number of people. Sometimes it's like we have to go with as many as 5 people in this fairly small canoe because it's the only way we can power it. And one of the reasons why they have that is because look at the design of the paddle that we can see. If you're used to a canoe paddle today, it's wide at the bottom. Of course, we have scientific design of paddles and all that good stuff. Their paddles were fairly narrow, and so it created a very short and very frequent stroke to get them to go do anything. Now, there were probably specific reasons for that. I mean, they could make bigger paddles, but maybe they didn't last. Maybe this was the best way to do it. Maybe it's like bicycling, where it's like, no, revolutions, it's all about revolutions, not about torque, basically. So I don't know the science behind that, but here we have someone who is very concerned about where he's going. He doesn't look like he's worried about tipping. There are times, there's a great reference in something from the 18th century where somebody's on a dugout canoe and they're just amazed by the fact that the Native Americans were able to keep it from upsetting because like half of it was ripped away, and they were, just it was like, don't tip like 1 inch or we'll sink, right? But some of these boat travels, basically every canoe, people riding canoes, it was very hair raising, just like this image. Somebody catching horses. Horses were extremely important, especially to the Pemmican trade. It was very difficult. The buffalo or the bison herds, depending on the time of year and what's going on with the reproductive time span of the bison, the much desired cows would be in the center of the herd, and on the outside would be the bulls, and they would be protecting. And so you would have to have a very good horse to be able to dodge in between these very vicious bulls to get into the desirable cows. And sometimes you would actually have to kill multiple bulls to get into the herd so that you could get the more desirable cows. And a lot of times the bulls were completely wasted. They just wouldn't do anything with them. They just let them rot because they wanted to get to the desirable ones. And having a good horse was everything. It was part of your equipment. We get to see snowshoes. I love the little cat-eared hoods, which are very period. And I'm not ready for winter.
No, not at all.
I think I'm going to skip this image right away. So
we'll just
good
hibernate.
Enough.
So the first one of these, could you go back to those two? So the first one of these is called Out After Reindeer Start. And then the second one is called Going Home with the Tongues, Very Cold But Oh So Happy.
Wow. With only tongues.
It seems to imply that they just brought the tongues back.
Totally believable. There's at least one reading that I've got here that talks about tongues being so very, very important. And there was maybe I'll get to it, where he's talking about somebody kind of setting up in a particular area, and he's not going all out to do pemmican, but other things because they're more commercially viable, and tongues was one of them. My throat gets any lower, I don't know.
Here we are, thankfully, in summer now.
Okay. Yes, more like it. And we get to see the packs. We get to see, axes, important thing. Dog with a pack. I love it.
I love the dog with his little pack.
Wow. That is so much fun. And, I beg your pardon, and he runs into a bear, or it's a bear. It's got to be a bear.
Yes,
right?
it is a bear. Black bear, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's probably going out to water the plants, and all of a sudden it's like, yikes, I think I'll head back to camp.
Okay, so the slug is in response to a totally different comment. This is because somebody had commented on the pumpkin video, and they said, pumpkins are great if they don't get eaten by slugs like mine were. And then they said, do you even have slugs in America? And so I have sent this picture.
Yeah, this was it this spring or spring before?
I think it was spring before this one.
Yeah, this is on the sidewalk going to basically every day we walk to the post office a couple blocks, and this giant slug was on the sidewalk.
Yeah, the reason I took pictures, most of our slugs are not this big. This is a monster slug.
Ooh, slug pemmican, though. I mean,
delicious.
I'm wondering, Ooh.
Okay, do you want to get to some of your readings?
Yeah, Azriel says, where would you suggest buying pemmican? I don't have any suggestions for you. Somebody might have in the chat. I've only run into one or two commercially produced pemmicans, and I would not necessarily suggest them. There was that in the image one or two back. There was the pack with the axe, and there was there was a reading. I don't have it here. Somebody talking about going deep into the interior, and he was talking about hafting their axes. So they stopped. They started to work on their camp. They were going to build like a log cabin, and then that is like the next step was, oh, we have to haft our axes and other tools. They have to put handles on things. So they traveled without their axes having handles on them. And how important is an axe? Well, there's a legal case in 1861 between two Métis in the Red River area, a hunter and his hired woman. So there was a bison hunter, and then he had a business partner, a woman. And the woman was, I think she brought the case, is like, he's not paying me. He said he would, pay me XYZ. And the point of the contract was something like, okay, the helper was to use her own carts and oxen to go out to the hunt. And the hunter agreed to kill 4 animals for me, and every 4th animal he killed was to be mine till I had my quantity. So basically, I think that works out to be 20 animals, right? So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is hers, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever is hers. And he gets 16. She was to do the butchering and pounding the meat, so making it into the powder and making the pemmican, as well as to dress the skins. So his part was, you risk your life getting the buffalo. She's basically doing everything else. But the hunter claimed that the hired woman had neglected her duty, lost one of his axes en route, and wasted meat from the cows. And by this point, in 1861, there are fewer bison, and so every cow counts. So she isn't being as careful with the meat as possible. He retaliated by not delivering up to her the proportion of cows agreed upon. The court eventually found in favor of the woman. But it turns out, even though that was happening, there was a whole problem with debt. I think a lot of the situations were very much like company store situations where they were already in debt. And so even when, something is worked out, it's like, oh, well, you still owe, $1,000. So it's like, what's the difference? So that was one. There was an interesting reading here about, so I mentioned the person that went in, and he wasn't just, so it isn't just pemmican they're making. This person is working on pemmican, but he actually produces a much larger quantity of pickled tongues. So he's going out harvesting tongues and pickling them, which you do need salt for, because they're worth a lot of money, 7 pence each. And then, so that year he carried 500 tongues back, 130 cured bosses, I'm not sure exactly what he means there, 2 bowls of green meat, so that is meat that isn't completely dried, so it might be basically fresh meat or kind of half-dried meat, 5 bags of pemmican, that is not a lot, that's only 450 pounds of pemmican, a bag of hard fat, so a giant bag of just suet, not pemmican, 9 bladders of marrow fat, so they're taking the bladders and using them as a means. So I don't know how big a bison bladder is, but you could imagine it's probably a couple gallons. maybe 15 pounds. So marrow fat, which is high-end, expensive fat. 100 bales of sinew. So they're doing the back straps of sinew on the back of the leg, where they get this strap of sinew that you can use for sewing and all kinds of good stuff. 5 ridge bones. Don't know. 17 skins. The skins were not very valuable. Kind of a low-end, cheap leather at the time period. A lot of times they would just strip the skin off, just toss it aside. And 15 bundles of dried meat. So the dried meat, so before it's been turned into pemmican, maybe even before you pounded it, is a product in and of itself. And previous to the 18th century, in this time period, previous to the 19th century, some of the Native American tribes are basically subsisting on something like dried meat. It was very, very popular in the 18th century, and it's only in the 19th century that pemmican starts to kind of push that out. Ooh. I got more to read, but you want to jump in with anything?
Okay, so a couple questions. Okay, well, there was a member chat. What's the recipe for 18th century Dayquil?
I think I had it right here, but it's all gone now.
And then somebody else was wondering about medicinal stuff. They were wondering if herbal medicine was able to be practiced by commoners during the time period, or if it was kind of restricted to specific pharmacies.
No, I think it's in fact more common. There's a lot of folk medicine and home medicine that's going on in the 18th century. You'll find it all over in the back of different cookbooks and in medical books of the time period, specifically medicine pointed toward homemakers and people in the family.
Were organ meats used in pemmican?
No.
Okay.
No, those were probably, like the tongues, you might pick those out special if you have a thing for, it's like, oh, I'm all about bison lung. But I'm not.
Okay, so here's some super chats. There's one from Heather T. Hope you feel better quick, John. And some autumn leaves.
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm like, you know how it is when you try to sleep when you're sick? It just doesn't work. You have the same 3-second dream cycling over and over again. That's been the last 3 nights. I'm just tired of that.
Ready to be done and on the upward slope.
Yeah.
Relatively nomadic. Being here probably a decade. Learned a ton and respect the work put in. Forget us for a while. Take a break and do something for yourself.
Well, it's a little late. I'm here now.
Well, there is a break scheduled for next week.
Yeah, I still got to figure out how I'm going to do a video before that.
You could just take a break.
Yeah.
Speed and Style Tony. Some money to get a posset so you don't end up with tainted brain.
Oh, yes. Could use me some posset. A lot of nutmeg.
Frontier Patriot. Hello, John and the gang from Ron and Justine. When's the next cooking competition?
I don't know. It depends on who we can trick into,
You gotta have someone who's like, yes, I'd love to be in a cooking competition. Okay, and then there is a super chat from Edigen42. I hope you feel better soon. I hear it's cold up there. We have family near Dunkirk.
It's
not too bad yet.
It's 50s.
It's going to be, though. Winter's going to come.
No. It's going to be wonderful.
Okay. Do you want to do another reading?
Yeah, so wastefulness, we kind of touched on the idea. Like we saw those guys and they had just the tongues, right? Even in a fall hunt represented only the most succulent and fatty parts. The rest stays in, this is a quote, the rest stays in the field, the wolves' inheritance. You're talking about the hunters making pemmican from the fat from the interior of the animal. Basically, the rest goes to waste. And it was a very streamlined and a mechanical process, you know. So they're being very, very efficient with their labor and just going through and working on the animals. Alexander Ross said of a particular hunt, 2,500 animals killed, only 375 bags of pemmican. Those are just 90 pounds apiece. And 240 bales of dried meat were made. He believed the meat from only 750 of the animals was preserved. So out of 2,500 animals, the meat from 750 was preserved. The food, in short, was wasted. Scarcely 1/3 of the number of the animals was turned to account. So some of this may have been eaten on the spot. Some of this may have been bulls that were killed, but undesirable meat. Maybe it was more gamey or whatever. It wasn't worth the time to butcher the animal. When you're just like, I'm going to move on to this cow. It's twice as big. It's got better meat. It's got more fat, and they're basically leaving all kinds of stuff behind. The capital butchers these men were of the plains, not very dainty dissectors, nor quite in the style of the English market, but just in the quickest and simplest way for themselves, they do it well. The meat is thrown into a cart, and off they go to cut up another one, and perhaps a third, or more if the hunters have been fortunate. So in this particular hunt, I believe, where the 2,500 animals were, there were two other matters of the hunts. He counted 1,630 people on his own hunt, and he found no fewer than 542 dogs. So dogs are a very big part of camp life and what's going on with this. I think a lot of times we just don't understand how important it was to have the dogs along, and of course they were a big thing they had to feed too. So the buffalo are being used for, or the bison are being used for much more than just, oh, we're making the pemmican. It's like, we're going to feed everyone, we're going to feed our dogs, we're going to, all kinds of stuff. Wow. Oh, quick shout out to, so we had bison footage, right? So you got pictures of bison, and that was a special treat. We went up to the Wild Winds Buffalo Preserve in Fremont, Indiana. It's about an hour and 15 minutes from here, up at the very, very northeast corner of Indiana. They've got a 400-acre ranch up there with how many animals? 250 wild bison, some of the plains and some of the woods bison. And we got to go, we just drove right out into the pile of them. None of them wanted to eat us, which is good, or gore us, thankfully. But it was fun. We got lots of great pictures, and a super thank you to the people there. The best place to find them is on Facebook, and they do tours in the wintertime, on the weekends. During the summer, you can go there during the week, and they also have like a bed and breakfast giant pine lodge that some people reserve and have fun in. So it's a really neat place. It's called Wild Winds Buffalo Preserve.
And I put the link in the chat.
Thank you.
And it's in the description too, just in case.
There we go. And there is another thing that Lauren put in the description. What's his name, Thomas?
David, hold on.
Thompson?
David Townsends.
Right.
Yes.
There's a really interesting book there. Probably, who knows if I can figure out how to make it into a good title and thumbnail. Really interesting book there by that guy. And part of that exploring the West in the late 18th century, early 19th century, and very, very interesting reading. He went out to like Hudson Bay, and when he was like 15, it gets burnt down, and this is like he goes out exploring. So excellent book. Check out that link.
So someone's saying Lance Gentle. No, I'm sorry. King of Gamers. Did you make your own candles? I love the atmosphere.
Actually, almost all these candles I did make. That's why they're not doing very well.
They're a little too mixed. They're
Made them
not
out
all
of
beeswax.
scrappy wax, and it kind of does more melting than burning. So
But they
I end
look
up with-
cool.
Well, there you go.
There is a super chat from Feral Terminator. One of the first meals I learned how to cook was from watching your channel. Thanks for the inspiration.
You're very welcome. I really enjoy the fact that I'm confused by it, but I enjoy the fact that people learn about cooking from me, because I would never consider myself.
But it makes for a good intro because you start.
It should be subtitled. If John can cook this, you can too. So there you go.
And there is a super chat from Allie Burden. Thank you for all your hard work, Townsends team. Feel better soon, John. Lots of tea and soup.
Yes, if they brought me a vat of soup, I could swim in it, and I would probably feel a lot better.
Okay, you ready to wrap up?
Yes, we are ready to wrap up. We did an incredible thing for this live stream. We just covered just like, I feel like I'm swimming in Pemmican, and it's been a wonderful time. And I want to thank you for coming into the tavern and, encouraging me and trying to send me off. Go away, John. But you guys are too kind to me. Thank you so much for your incredible support, super chat, and people on Patreon and members and Townsends Plus and people that buy cool mugs for merch and all that kind of good stuff, or just your encouraging words are an important part of why we can continue to do what we do. And I think it's important, or I wouldn't be here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Ivy. Thank you. Have a great weekend, and thanks for watching.